Here's a speech that I gave for Toastmasters last Friday. The speech is similar to Slavoj Žižek's analysis of ideology in regards to certain utilities and architecture that we have, and he uses it as an example, perhaps a striking example, of how ideology can pervade into many aspects of our lives. So the example is about toilets, surprisingly. He starts off by saying, well, there's so much meaning to things we think. The bigger sense of buildings, you go to Paris, you examine all these buildings, it's the architecture of the French, and you go to England and you see different things, and it possibly says something about their ideology. But what about when you go to areas such as Russia and you see other types of architecture? It speaks to their ideology. What about the simplest things? He contends that ideology can go into even the most simplest objects. For example, we examine toilets, a simple utility we assume. In the American and English world, we have sort of the bowl, and that is what we're used to. However, he cites three other references. The French toilet where the hole's in the front, and the German toilet where the hole's in the back. He asks, why does this difference occur? If there was pure utility, wouldn't it all be the same? He says that he came to friends who are architects, and he got books, and those weren't sufficient. However, he came upon this crazy idea. Since the late 18th century, 3 civilizations have sort of arisen in Europe specifically, and it fits the paradigm sort of simplistically. It's the English, the French, and the Germans. The Germans were conservative. They were very conservative in regards to developing ideas. They were also metaphysical and poetical. The French, very liberal, very revolutionary. And the English, and as the Americans are sort of their posterity, were known to be moderates. They let things sit, they think about them. So he provides a syllogism. The toilets fit into the ideologies perfectly. The syllogism goes like this. Germans, conservative. They have everything in the front, so they examine it, in a way. The French, very liberal. It's like a guillotine. It's in the back, the hole's in the back, it just drops down immediately. And the English are the moderates, the ones in the middle. They let things sit and simmer for a while. So the syllogism goes, each toilet represents the ideology of a culture. Now, he says this is simplistic. However, it makes sense. And I think this is an example of the types of syllogisms that Aristotle suggests we use in rhetoric. So I think that Slavoj Žižek is using this as a syllogism to magnify a point. He doesn't necessarily believe the toilets were necessarily an outcome of that specific ideology, but he says everything is a product of some sort of ideology. And ideology is not necessarily political ideology, but rather the constructs and social constructs we have around us.